Adam, thank you so much for coming on the Winner's Paradigm podcast, brother. It's been an honor getting to know you through social media and talking to you a little bit, and then now finally getting you on the podcast, brother. So before I get ahead of myself, excuse me, would you mind giving us a brief intro, who you are, what you're passionate about today, brother?
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I know we've been connected for a while, so glad to finally be here. Adam McChesney, so I'm here in St. Louis, Missouri, married to my wife, Delaney. We just welcomed our first child into the world about 3.5 months ago. So Murphy is our newborn baby boy. Super excited to add, father to the many titles that I wear right now. We also have a dog, Georgie, born and raised here in St. Louis together. So kind of exactly where we grew up at. And right now, what I do is I'm a full-time digital marketing agency owner. So have a multi-seven-figure agency. We have about 120 full-time team members, a couple hundred clients. We do everything from logo and branding to website design, search engine optimization, Google PPC, Facebook ads, all that good stuff. But I spent 5 years in medical device sales right out of college, sold CPAP equipment, did that, made some really good money, worked at a great company, got a lot of experience, but ultimately in 2018, I found digital marketing and decided to buy a course, learn digital marketing, kind of the insides and outs of all that stuff, and then eventually just go full time with it. So went full time with it in 2020 in the midst of the pandemic, and then have really grown the agency through a variety of different factors and investing in myself and my mindset and reading books and getting in the right rooms with the right people and all that stuff, investing in business coaching. But the other passion project that I have right now is our Builders of Authority program, where I'm teaching people how to build a personal brand and be different from everybody else in their industry directly through the things that I've learned and that I use to grow my agency from nothing in 2020 to hit our first seven figures in about 15 months. And so that's been a really cool thing for me to kind of add on to the podcasting and all the content and the speaking engagements that I'm doing.
Boom, brother. And I love that. I love the transparency and kind of how you're showing throughout that whole journey. And let's start there. First, what was it like to go all in on yourself? Because I know right now that's something, coming on the new year, and there's a lot of people like, I don't know if I should do this, or maybe they jumped into the business and they haven't made the money. So they're having those thoughts of, hey, I should just go out here. So what was it like when you went all in on yourself, brother?
Yeah, so I think it was one of those things where I grew up and I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do after college. I knew that like I wanted to obviously make money. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to have some things that maybe I didn't have growing up as a kid. But I had a lot of the things that like your typical. Sorry, my video is messing up, so I'm just switching that right now. But I had everything that like the typical individual would have or like want to have as a kid, but I didn't have the most present father. And so he was always there, supportive, and those types of things. And so I tell people like I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew a lot of what I didn't want. And so I kind of tried to mold my professional career around that. Well, then I looked at me at the age of 26, 27, making all this money in medical device sales and having pretty much anything I thought I could want at that time, but I wasn't married. I had just proposed to my now wife, Delaney, but I was thinking in the future, right? And so I was thinking in the future, I was like, all right, I'm already kind of seeing how I'm going down and I'm creating a lifestyle based off a lot of the things that my dad did to ultimately get him to implode. I don't want to repeat that. So in 2020, I went full time, but in 2018, I was sitting in a hotel room after traveling a bunch for medical device sales. And I literally sat down and I typed into Google how to make money online. And I got retargeted by an ad on Facebook that taught me digital marketing. And so that was like my first aspect of really investing in myself. And then I got to a point in 2020 where I just decided like, hey, it's now or never. I'm going to go all in. I can always go back and get a job if I want to. That's always going to be there. But we don't have kids at the time, right? We had just bought our house. So like we had kind of had some of those foundational things as the security aspect. I didn't need it to like pay off right now. I needed obviously to pay off at some point. But if I don't take this opportunity now, I would probably always regret it. And so I'm really glad, obviously, I took the jump and I made the leap and I bet on myself. But like, I think there just comes a point in everybody's life where you're like, hey, I don't like what I'm doing, but then you don't do anything about it. There comes a point in your life where you're like, hey, I want change, I want different things, but then you're not willing to make the change, right? And so now's a perfect time with the new year coming up. There is something that's been like holding you back, or something that you've been wanting to do. Like at some point, you're just going to have to take the leap or stop complaining that nothing is changing.
Ooh, I love that, brother. And I resonate with that just on the going all in part. For me, it kind of was the same, finished up college because I was in the Marine Corps and I was going to school while I was in. So got out, and worked sales jobs that just weren't in alignment with myself. And then finally thought, okay, I'm at the job that cares. And our nanny moves to Minnesota. So I'm holding the baby, making sales calls. Numbers go down for a week and then they soar up. And everybody was like, what are you doing? And for me, it was just going more intentional, And then two, I seen a video and it's breaking down if you're making X amount of dollars in sales and the company's making this off you, this is how much money you're leaving on the table. So I already had this in my head of I'm going to start a business. Luckily, got to work with one of the biggest dudes in podcasting, and that happened for about a little over a year and a half, and then that didn't work out. So for me, it was the same. I went to ground zero, and I'm like, man, what do I really want to do? And it was investing in myself. And it was funny because I seen something where someone was like, New Year's resolutions don't work. And I said that before. And I had one of the other accountability people from entrepreneurship groups checked me and they're like, yeah, they do. And then they're like, for you to say that's a negative belief. And I was like, thinking about it. I'm like, you know what it is? If it creates a lifestyle change. So for me, it was like, hey, I needed to get better within business. So I focused on my health. I got in the best shape of my life. And then it helped out the business aspect. All of a sudden, it was like, all those small things that I was worrying about or that flow status that I needed when I'm sitting there trying to work on a course or learn something. Because I tried to do video editing for 6 months. I just learned like I'm not a tech guy. So
Mm-hmm.
the second part for you, when it came to digital marketing and figuring out, hey, what resonates with you, what works, did you find that it was easier to figure out what works first or what you're good at so you can delegate the rest of the things?
Yeah, I figured out a variety of different things. I think I ultimately figured out really later on that it was what I was good at that I wanted to continue to do. I went and I did everything for the first year. So I was traveling all across the country for 5 years in some sort of fashion. And I said, hey, I don't want to go and travel. I don't want to go into an office. I don't want to meet with people. I want to be behind a screen 8, 9, 10, 12 hours a day. I want to build websites. I want to rank them on Google and I want to run paid ads. So that was kind of like my mindset going into entrepreneurship. Well, then I get into entrepreneurship. I realized that you got to go to these events. You don't have to, but like if you really want to grow, you got to get in the right rooms with the right people. You got to shake more hands. You got to get your brand and all these things out there. So I started to do that. And then I realized I really enjoyed being the visionary and having the ideas and going and finding opportunities for us, but that I wasn't the best at building the website. I wasn't the best at doing the SEO. I wasn't the best at doing a lot of the things that needed to get done. So I ran my own little agency for about 9 months, and then I merged over at Height Digital, which is now where I'm a partner at. And I found over the course of that time that we get into our little bubbles where we think we know everything or we think that we're like the best at X, Y, and Z. And we let our ego play into that story of like, no, we're the best at this. And in reality, it's like we're usually not. We're usually good at like one or two things, and that's okay. So I really just tried to like stay in my zone of genius and let everything else come into fruition and just take its course. And that's where we saw like exponential growth. In 2020, we did $150,000 in revenue. Good for 6 months of full time, but in 2021, we did 750. And then last year we did 1.7 million. This year we'll do upwards of 3.5 million. So like all of the growth and all those things happened not because I did everything, but because I did and focused on what I was really, really good at and allowed other people to come in and compliment me.
Ooh, that was money, brother. And I love the way, you explained it out, in the delegation process, but kind of the scaling as well. And that's one of the things you talk about all the time. On social media, we see you with these clips multiple times a day, and you're coming on and you're giving exceptional leadership advice, and you're helping guide other entrepreneurs in the right direction. And I love that about you, brother. And that was one of the things, we started talking. I was like, yeah, finally I get to ask that question about the leadership is, what could we do differently as entrepreneurs to start leading in that right way, to where at least we align ourselves with where we want to be, versus getting stuck in that hole like we were talking about previously.
Yeah. And I think like when I looked at it, I was like, man, I don't want to be a leader of people. I don't want to manage a bunch of employees. I don't want to do these things. I want to stay in my small little bubble and do that. And the more and more that I tried to fight it, the more and more I realized I added so much stress and anxiety on myself, because I really had just created a job, not actually having a business. Right. And so like now I could walk away from our business, and of course, like it won't be the same right now for a variety of different reasons. We're trying to work on that. But like I could walk away for 30 days and us be okay. Right. A year and a half ago, if I walked away for 30 days, like we wouldn't implode, but like it would be pretty dang close. And so that thing that I used to fight, where I'm like, man, I'm not a leader of people. I hate managing people. I hate. It was kind of that negative belief that you were just talking earlier. I had convinced myself that I wasn't good at leading people. I was convincing myself that I couldn't do something. But that was because I was like, man, I just want to focus on my zone of genius. I want to be dangerous enough to where I know enough about all these different aspects, but I just want to know that so that way I can hold people accountable and make sure that I'm bringing the right people on the bus in order to have them own that particular aspect. Or if I'm using an accountant or a CPA, like I just want to know that they're the right people to be complimenting me. And whether we know it or not, people are looking up to us and watching what we're doing, and we're leading people in some sort of fashion, whether it's your family, whether it's your friends, whether it's people on social media that you've never met before, or it's your employees. And so the more I like owned that and started to like truly realize like, man, I need to think about this differently. That's when things started to change too. You start to see like people are wanting to come and work with you. People are going out of their way to support you. All of these things happen because you take ownership of, man, I have to be a leader of people, whether I have one employee, no employees, or 120.
Ooh, I love the way you said that, brother. And it's funny because I was thinking about the term congruence the whole time you're talking about it, because we talked about congruent from the bubble to being really that better version of a leader of yourself by getting out of it. And then two, you talked about it when it was, alignment. And then even now working on the business and making sure that you're doing the right things so you can hire and really hire, acquire, and then attract the right people to work with you. And I'd say, that's something that I'm finding out with business is like, for me, it was getting clients, and initially it was getting the wrong clients, and then it was fucking everything up. And then it was, hey, I need to do something differently. And then you start attracting the clients you actually want at a different frequency, and you start focusing on, you based off that brand. So for you, I don't want to open too much up about the personal brands, brother, but let's tap into that real quick and talk about, attracting that ideal client that we want, because I know a lot of us struggle from that point.
Yeah. So, in the beginning, you're growing a business and you're like, man, I'll take on any client. You're like, I just need the revenue. I need the money. I need the experience. And the more and more that you get the experience of taking on clients and doing all these things, you realize pretty quickly who you like to work with and then who you don't like to work with. So I always tell people to go through what I refer to as like an ideal client exercise, because if you don't know who your ideal client is, anytime you're doing your personal brand or you're doing marketing or advertising, if you don't know who that ideal client is, it's really tough to go get more of them, right? Like I always use the term or the phrase or the whatever you want to call it, of like people are like, hey, I went out and bought this car, and then all of a sudden, like I got the car. Now I realize going down the street, everybody else has that same color car or the same car. Like, why is this happening? Why does everybody have the same car? It's like, no, because you went and got that car, now you're just more receptive to know when other people have the exact same type of car. no different than knowing who your ideal client is. When you know who your ideal client is, it's easier for you to go and spot those ideal clients, right? So when you have that ideal client exercise, it's going in and I walk people through is go take a look at your best 10 clients that you've ever had. Like the ones that if you're like, hey, if I could go get 10 more of those right now, I would do anything in order to get them. And then write down the common characteristics, the things that kind of make them who they are, or the businesses who they are, and then mold that together, the things that, kind of they all have in common, and that's your ideal client profile. And then take a look at your last 10 clients that you brought on and do the exact same exercise and see if it's mirrored up to the people that you actually want to do more business. A lot of times it's not, because we know who our ideal clients are, but we're in a business of growing and trying to scale where we need that money, we need that stuff. So that's an exercise that I always tell people to walk through. And then once you have that ideal client, you're then able to morph your personal brand and your content around that stuff, right? So for me, our ideal clients are entrepreneurs that are typically in contracting companies. They're doing $1 million plus a year in revenue. They already have a CRM that's in place. They've been in business for 3+ years. They're looking to grow because they have somebody other than themselves that owns the marketing internally, and they have a sales rep or a sales team. And so they're in a position for us to be able to partner with them to grow and scale the company, right? But now when I produce my content, it's directly geared towards who I'm trying to talk to. And I'm not just shoving and showing up and shoving digital marketing down their throat. What I'm doing is I'm giving them little bits and pieces of nuggets about entrepreneurship, about motivation, about self-development, about all the things that an entrepreneur that's a contractor that's doing $1 million plus in business is going to want to typically consume. And then I sprinkle that stuff in with digital marketing, but I usually like to tell a story. So I don't know if that kind of adds up. I know it was a long-winded answer, but there's not just one. You can't just decide to start posting. You can't just know who your ideal client is. You've got to connect all of the dots in order to make it effective.
No, I love that. And that was something for me. That the advice I got originally was to do as you go, and kind of figure it out as you go. And I'm figuring it out, and then it was just unclear for a long time. And then eventually, it was, hey, I'm helping that previous version of myself, that man who got on his knees and was begging God for shit to change. And this is how the mindset happened. And then for me, I started sharing that journey every single day, multiple times a day. And all of a sudden people started messaging me like, bro, you're doing all these crazy things. How are you doing it? And I'm like, oh, I just have to be a better version of myself. So I just force myself to do the things I don't want to do. And people are like, what the heck? So when it comes to building our social media brand, posting frequently, doing reels that are going to attract that ideal client, what is one thing you recommend for people to do when they're trying to get their social media in alignment with their business?
Yeah, so I think it kind of goes back to what you said. Like you sometimes do just have to do it as you go. Like in our Builders of Authority program right now, I'm teaching all these people how to get started or to take their stuff to the next level. And they're thinking about like chapter 20 in their personal branding journey, because that's where I'm at, but they're on chapter 1 or 2, right? So like until you know what resonates with your audience and also what you're passionate about talking about, you have to kind of throw crap against the wall, usually for about 90 days or sometimes even 6 months, in order to truly understand how this stuff is all playing out to where you enjoy doing it and you're benefiting from it in some sort of way, whether that's passion, purpose, or profit, right? And then from there, it's doing more of what is working and less of what's not. So there's going to be platforms or times of day or types of content that is not going to resonate with your ideal audience. And when it doesn't resonate with your ideal audience and you're not having purpose or passion or profit from it, you're going to get really upset and mad, right? So it's about connecting all of those dots, doing it all consistently in the beginning and then consistently ongoing, but figuring out what works.
Man, you hit it on the money, brother. And I love that. Just the way that you were explaining it, is a lot of us overthink shit, and we think it's too big versus getting to work and then test driving it and figuring out what actually works and giving that time period. So a lot of us want that short, instant gratification. So I love the way that you said that there, brother. And let's tap it into, what is it like now being a present father, being a present husband? You mentioned the not wanting to be what you didn't want to be. So what was it like now, being fully present and understanding that?
Yeah. So, I joke with my wife, right? Where it's like when we found out in January of this past year that she was pregnant, like of course for her it changes, right away. Where it's like, okay, she's feeling all of the symptoms and she's the one carrying the baby and all of those things. It's different when you're obviously the husband or the father, because you're like, okay, I understand and I'm supporting you and I'm trying to like understand how this is going to change my life, but until you hold the baby for the first time, that's for me. And I know a lot of people, like, that's when it's like, okay, this changes. And so I went from a franchisee of Hike Digital earlier this year to be a partner of the entire organization, not because it was going to make me more money this year, but it was going to buy a bunch of my time back and set me up for the future to be able to do more stuff on my own terms for my family. And so I made some drastic changes this year, and I'm still like in the brunt of a lot of these changes and adding things and switching things up. So, like moving forward in 2024 and beyond, I can be that present husband, father, what have you, differently than what I experience and what other people experience. I will tell you, like, it has been tough, really, in the first 3 months of just being like, when do I turn things off and how do I turn things off? And I have an office, luckily, but when I get home, people are still blowing up my phone. So it's like putting the phone down and making sure and dedicating time to the family. All of those things are super important, right? So it's just really trying to like identify those opportunities, understand what's going on, and then moving forward from there.
Man, I love that so much, and props to you, brother. On figuring it out. That's one thing that I'm continuously doing. It's like, hey, how do we turn it off? How to get off the phone at this time, and then being clear with it as well. Is, hey, this is why we're intentional about what we're doing, and it really shows up in your work and everything you do, brother. So I appreciate you for sharing that tip, because I know that's going to help a lot of us men out there. I'll wrap it up with the last question here, brother. What would you say to the previous version of ourself? We don't know where to start. We just want to align ourselves with our definition of success.
What you are worried about right now in this moment, likely a couple months from now, in 100%, 3 to 5 years from now, it's not going to matter. I think we get so caught up in like the moment of, hey, this is like earth shattering to me right now. And it almost like crushes us because we put so much stress in standard and all these different things. And it is important, whatever's going on like right now. But when we can realize that like the things that we were probably like thinking that were like earth shattering or so important this time last year, I don't even remember what it was. It's because when we grow and when we develop and when we get on the other side of whatever we're dealing with, there's a whole another set of problems and issues and things like that. And they're never going to go away. We're just going to get better at managing it and facilitating what those are. But we got to cut ourselves a little bit of grace and give ourselves some understanding and the opportunity to know that it's going to be okay. And down the line, this probably won't matter.
Boom, brother. What's funny is I'm learning that right now. I had a breakthrough moment. I'm on a 10-day fast. I'm done with day 7. So on day 8 now, and last night, that was one of the things that hit me. So it's funny that you're speaking about that now. When we talked about congruence, I truly believe that, when you're congruent, when you're aligned with yourself, you attract those people. And that was literally something that I thought about last night, was it just hit me. And I'm like, the things that I was so worried about don't even matter. Like, I got so upset about whatever in the business. I take care of the little ones and run the business. So that used to be something I used to get so frustrated on. And really, like, the past 4 months, I'll say I've done a better job at just embracing it. And I always tell people that, like, I either tell them the vulgar way or tell them the nice way, depending on how their character is. And I'm like, hey, man, like, if you can't respect that, I take care of my kids and I run the business. Good thing is, it has the isolation mode when you go on a call, so they can't hear the screaming in the background.
Yeah.
But if we're on a podcast, I'm like clear about it, and that's what's landing me more business, is just being authentic and real. And that was something for me, where I was out of not being as present, because I'd be like, man, I have all this to do. We have this money to make. I had this partnership that didn't work. I need to get this money because I promised my wife big things, and now we're in the hole and blah, 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 So it was funny because last night, like, it hit, and it was just like, the things that you think that matter don't matter. So you're gonna have to just go with it as it goes. And I was like, man, and like this morning it was just like a new energy coming towards that. So I love that you shared that, bro. It resonated with me deeply. Where can people find you, man, if they want to keep up with you, brother?
Yeah, so the best place on social media is going to be my Instagram. That's Adam L. McChesney. You can also go to adammcchesney.com where you can find out everything about everything that we're doing at Hike Digital, all my other social channels, and then Builders of Authority. If you want to join our free Builders of Authority Facebook group, go just type in Builders of Authority on Facebook. Got a ton of good information in there, past trainings, as well as new trainings we do every single week.
Perfect, brother. And thank you again, brother. It was an honor.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate you.